Welcome to the Busy to Balance podcast. I am your host, Jamie Zweer, and I'm the founder of Oh How Healthy. This podcast is all about how to show you, the overworked, overwhelmed, and occasionally unhealthy woman, how to find health and balance in all different areas of your life. I will share with you digestible, bite-sized bits of info on everything from balancing a healthy plate to keeping a healthy home and everything in between. Now listen, I know that you are busy, and that is why I will keep these episodes short, sweet, and to the point. Now let's dive into today's episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so grateful to have you here. You can listen to any podcast out there, and the fact that you chose to click on my podcast and listen to me talk, it really means a lot to me. So thank you for tuning in today. And today's episode is a rather vulnerable episode. This is a topic that I have not shared with a lot of people. I have not talked about this with a lot of people, and the people that do know this about me, we haven't discussed it in years. And I think that this is something about myself that even my close, immediate family does not even know about me. And this kind of was brought up. I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and she was telling me that she just got engaged and that she really wants to lose weight. And she told me all about the low-fat foods and restricted way of eating that she was going to adopt to achieve the weight loss goals that she kind of set out to achieve. And it was through this conversation that it became very clear to me why I am so passionate against the idea of dieting and that whole restricted philosophy of weight loss. This brought up a part of my life that I suppressed for a really long time, for about 10 years to be exact. And mainly because it was too painful to talk about. And not only that, but it also brought up shame, like a lot of shame. I was shameful about this period in my life that I'm going to express to you. And I'm noticing now that it's coming to the surface a lot. It's, it popped up in my head when I was having the conversation with this woman, and it's coming to my thoughts, to the forefront of my thoughts more and more. Whereas in the past 10 years, I didn't really think about it, or if I did, it was in a different way. So I feel like, I'm hearing about others also struggling with something similar. So I feel like it's a good time that I share this with you guys. And other stories about me. My story with my thyroid condition, and about me leaving my teaching job. But this story is a story that I think will really fill in a lot of missing links for you, and maybe make it a little bit more clear why I am so passionate about living a holistically healthy and balanced life, which I will get more into in the episode. So I'm constantly preaching to you to do things that you're afraid of, and this is something that I feel like I'm very fearful to talk about. I mean, not really, but this is a scary situation for me where I kind of want to avoid it and not move through and forward with it. But this is an example of feeling fear and doing it anyway. And I know that now feels like a comfortable time, more than ever before, to really talk about it. So, there's a fine line between fear, and you have to really trust your intuition and listen to your gut and listen to what is going on in your head. But so right now feels like a good time to kind of share the story with you. So, all right, enough, right? Just dive into it. So again, this is something that even close family members don't know about me. Now they're going to know if they listen to the podcast. But anyway, when I was younger, so I'm 30 now, but when I was in high school, halfway through my high school years, so probably 14, 15, 16 years old, I was dealing with an eating disorder. I suffered with this eating disorder for about, I want to say like 5 years. And I suffered with bulimia, to be exact. And it was a really hard time in my life. It was a time in my life where there was just a lot going on. I guess as a high schooler, you deal with stressors. I believe that an eating disorder has more intact, there's more tied to it than just what we're eating, and is more than just the food aspect of it and more than the weight loss aspect of it or what we look like. There's other things going on that kind of can contribute to that. I don't even remember when it started necessarily, but I do remember. So I grew up with a mom who is about 5 foot, if that, and weighs about like 100 pounds, like a very small framed woman. My whole family is pretty much like really tiny little people. And I'm not big or overweight by any means. However, I'm not built like them. I'm 5'5". My weight proportions differently in my body than them. And so I grew up with a mom who, I seen her, she was tinier than me, and she would always weigh herself, call herself fat and not really eat much. I don't think she necessarily had an eating disorder, but she wasn't a necessarily healthy person. So anyway, I was this little girl and observing this day in and day out. And I remember actually being, I don't even know how old you are when you weigh 50 pounds, but I remember weighing 50 pounds and thinking I did not want to weigh one more pound. Like I wasn't going to weigh one more pound. So this mentality was going on in my head for a long time before my eating disorder started. And I believe my eating disorder was a way of coping with things. But all my life I was, I guess, obsessed with my weight, worried about the way I looked, and just overall kind of unsatisfied and unhappy with myself. And I remember being this kid who I knew that I wanted to, my family just wasn't a very healthy family. And I remember wanting to have shakes actually as a little kid. Maybe I seen a Slim Fast commercial or I don't know what I seen, but I told my mom going shopping, I'm like, I want to drink shakes. And I remember buying, I asked if I can buy Ensure drinks. And, Ensure drinks are those drinks that they're not necessarily what someone would have if they wanted to lose weight. But I was like, oh yeah, that's a shake. I want to buy that. I want to have this can of vanilla, whatever in the morning. And I don't even know my mentality behind it, but I remember kind of wanting to jump on, I don't know if I wanted it for weight loss reasons or what, but I remember asking my mom for it and she bought it for me and I would drink them. And I remember always kind of being almost like a burden, I guess, when I would be that kid that wanted to maybe have a salad or maybe order sushi if we were ordering Chinese food. But by doing that, you're kind of like a burden. Jamie, we're ordering pizza. It's going to be $10. What do you mean you want a $11 salad? Or the sushi is extra. So that was another factor involved. And really, we just weren't a healthy family. So we would have bags of barbecue chips and Lunchables, and of course it's delicious, and as a kid you eat it. And so I just was never given the right tools as a kid. I wasn't really provided, coupled with my mom kind of saying negative things about herself and me absorbing that and carrying that with me through life. So anyway, that's why I feel like I'm so passionate about not only helping other women, but really helping kids who feel like they really want an outlet, where kids can only know and learn as much as what their parents or their teachers tell them and teach them. So that is a side note. But anyway, yeah, I was this kid that I kind of had that backwards way of thinking, starting off as a very young child, and then it carried with me throughout my adult life. And then as I was dealing with, I guess it was just my eating disorder was a way of dealing with the stress and the overwhelm and not really having an outlet to talk to. My parents split when I was younger, and there was just lots of craziness that went on and all the stuff that teenagers kind of go through. And I believe that my eating disorder was a way of dealing with it. It was just a way of releasing that built up and built up emotion and stress. And it was such an ugly, ugly time in my life. I mean, memories that I have of removing myself from certain social situations because there would be extra food there, or, drinks, or I would consume extra calories, and I just kind of avoided all of that. And my whole world was revolved around how much I weighed and kind of how I felt about myself, the way I looked, and calories. And I would try diet pills and all the different weight loss shakes, all the different fat-free foods, all of the different options. I would buy food, and I would even hide it because I didn't want my family to know that I was eating this diet food. It was just a very, very, very crazy situation and time in my life. So I remember, I guess I was dealing with it for a little bit on my own, and then I realized that I had to tell someone. And my sister was the first person that I went to, and telling her was definitely difficult. But I guess out of all the people, she was the person that I felt like I could trust the most. So my sister is 9 years older than me, so she had the ability to, make phone calls or drive or make certain connections where and not. She wasn't, my mom or my dad, so we didn't have to let them know right away. So anyway, my sister got involved, and I was in, I seen therapists, I seen nutritionists, I was in outpatient sessions where people would, you had to weigh yourself, turned around, you couldn't, see your weight. They watched you while you were eating. If you had to go to the bathroom after you ate, then someone would have to stand by the door and listen, or whether you had to sing a song, and someone had to make sure that you were talking to them or singing a song to make sure that you weren't relieving yourself of this food. So anyway, yeah, that's how bad the situation was. That this whole thing went on for, I want to say, a solid 5 years. I don't know specific dates, but yeah, that went on. So my sister knew, and then my dad found out. I was living with my dad, so my dad found out, because it had to go through insurance and all this stuff. But those two people were the main two people that knew until, and no, I wasn't dating Jesse yet, but I started dating Jesse when I was about 17, I think. So it was a few years before I started dating him that I was dealing with it. And then through dating him, I still was dealing with it. I remember having to tell him, and oh my God, that was the hardest thing. I remember sitting in the car for hours. I remember telling him, I have something to tell you. And we literally sat in the car for hours because it just wouldn't come out. I was I really have something to tell you. I was crying. It was such a hard time because, I was afraid of being judged. And that's why people still don't know this about me to this day. I was afraid of being judged, but, eventually Jesse found out, and I think maybe I thought that would really help. And I still try to think to this day what really was the defining factor that really helped me the most, because it wasn't the outpatient facilities, it wasn't the therapy, it wasn't the nutritionist, it wasn't any of that. It was me making the decision and realizing that I'm better than this and I'm worth it and I deserve to be healthy So there were times and months that I think I would do really well towards the end of my eating disorder, where I wouldn't relapse or anything. But then there were times where I did relapse, where it might have been months or a year later. And so those were, that was definitely a trying time in my life. And I still try to think to this day what really helped me overcome this really, really horrible thing that I was going through, because I've been so good about it all. I don't even think about it anymore, really. I haven't had this issue come up for years. I think about 10 years now. And I really try to think to this day, what was it that really helped me overcome it all? And what I think about most was I really had to dig in deep and analyze triggers that set me off. So there were, of course, bad habits that I developed throughout that process, whether, without getting too specific, but there were certain times and events and things that would go on where that would cause me to want to indulge in my eating disorder. So I had to really recognize what those triggers were and acknowledge them and sit with them and be uncomfortable with them and try to eliminate them. And so I feel like that was really huge. And I also started to really understand the damage that I was doing to my body. I was always interested in health and wellness, I guess, in some way. And I started to do some personal development and growth around that time when I was graduating high school and going into college, and, realizing that I had to be better than this. I knew that there was a light at the end of the tunnel, and it was a personal decision that I made that I wasn't going to continue down that path anymore. I think with anything, you have to make that personal decision, whether it is with a diet, whether it is with a relationship, whether it is with cutting a bad habit or adding in a good habit. You have to make that decision. It comes with you deciding enough is enough and you don't want to go down that path anymore and you deserve something more. So that is my very scary story that for some reason it's coming up, and I feel like I want to share this story and this part of me because it has molded me into the person that I am, and it has really made it clear to me why living a balanced life, eliminating those triggers, living a healthy life, and by eliminating those diet foods and adding in really healthy foods that nourish your body on such a deep level is so important to me. And I know that other people struggle with this. This has been coming up. People have been sharing stories with me, and I feel like this is really a great time to let all this out because I really feel like I'm in a really good place with the whole thing. I feel comfortable sharing it. And if anything, I really hope that I can help someone else in this situation. And if you're struggling with something like this, or if you know someone who is, there is a way out of it. There is light at the end of the tunnel. There are ways to make it through. I know when you're in that situation, it feels like there's no option. There's no way out. And it feels tough and heavy and difficult and impossible to make it through. But there is a way out, and it starts with you. It starts with you making that decision and realizing that you are worth it, that you're more than just your weight. You're more than what it is that you see in the mirror. You are a beautiful soul behind this body. This body is just a vehicle for you, and it does so much for you. Your body is always repairing itself. Your lungs are always breathing. Your heart is always beating. If you have children, it has birthed a baby. Like, you are an amazing, amazing person and human being and body. And so that is that. This is a very unscripted kind of podcast. I just want to let this story, I want to let it and release it into the universe. I want to share it with you. If this is something that you struggle with, if you know someone that is struggling with this, then I just want you to know that there is a way out of it. And an eating disorder doesn't have to be the eating disorder that I dealt with. There's bulimia, there's anorexia, there's orthorexia, where we are very strict and only eat healthy foods and we believe other foods are bad for us. The bottom line is that these ways of thinking is a dysfunctional way of thinking about food. Eating doesn't have to be so extreme. It doesn't have to be eating all of this food and then indulge too much. It doesn't have to be eating no food and have that going on. It doesn't have to be fixated and focused on eating a certain kind of food. It's an illusion of control. When we focus too much, it's just there's other areas in our lives that feel out of control. So we focus when someone is struggling with this, I believe, when someone is struggling with an eating disorder, there's a lack of control in other areas of their lives. So we can focus on what we're eating, and that can manipulate how we feel. So this is just my experience. This is just what I took out of what I went through and what I've learned. And I am no doctor, but this is why I'm so passionate about finding a balance in life, not only balancing our time management skills and balancing, all of the plates that we juggle, but finding a balance with what we're eating and how we're eating and our connection to food, and balancing our emotions and finding out of balance habits or triggers that may set us off, that is throwing us for a loop that we need to then dive into and find balance with. Because like I said, those out of balance ways of eating can throw our mood out of balance and our irritability out of balance, and thus throwing our relationships out of balance because we're snapping at someone, or throwing our weight out of balance because we're eating too much or too little of something, and then throwing our work life out of balance because, it's connected and it's all very cyclical, and it starts with what we're eating and finding a healthy, happy place with that. So I hope that this was helpful in the sense that it shines some light into the kind of work that I do and why I'm so passionate about it, and why this is not about the next diet and weight loss formula or exercise routine. It's about coming to the root of what and why you want to lose the weight, because sometimes people need to go on a diet because they really feel like they need to lose weight, and that's completely fine. That's completely healthy. But you have to make sure that it is a beneficial diet to you, and to make sure that you're on a diet for the right reasons, and to make sure that you have smart goals in place, and you have your why kind of carrying you through. And being on a diet does not have to be extreme or stressful or tasteless or restrictive at all. And that is really what I teach women as well. And also that losing weight and going on a diet or a weight loss routine or weight gaining routine, it's psychological. There's a lot that goes into it. And not only that, but sometimes enough is never enough. Think about a point in your life when you were your thinnest ever. If you look back at pictures of yourself now, you would have thought, because when we look back at pictures, we can remember kind of like what we were thinking or what was going on. And I'm sure you didn't think like, I look great. It was never enough, right? Like you always wanted to kind of lose more or look better, or was never fit enough, so that is a mentality that we need to remove as well. So there's a lot that goes into diet. There's a lot that goes into weight loss. There's a lot that goes into nutrition, and there's a lot of different factors that involve more than just what we're eating. So I hope that this podcast episode was helpful for you. I hope it sheds some light onto the kind of work that I do and what it means to me to be a holistic health coach and what kind of health coach I am, and kind of my why and my reasoning behind wanting to really help and support other women through finding balance with their weight, their diet, their lifestyle, and their health. That is about it for me today, guys. I hope that you enjoyed listening to my story. I'm glad that you tuned in. It really allowed me to have a place to share this, because this was something that was burrowed away for a long time. And I really feel like right now is a good time to really release it. And I hope that if someone or yourself is struggling with this situation, maybe you don't know which way to turn, maybe you don't know the first steps to take, you can reach out to me. I can direct you to someone else. I can see if I can support you in some way. And, I just kind of want to open the conversation. But I know that this can be a scary thing to talk about, but there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's support out there, and this is something that a lot of us deal with. So I'm opening up my story, and I hope that if this is something that you are struggling with, that you can feel brave enough to then share it with me, share it with someone that you love, share it with someone that might help you find support. If you have a friend that's struggling, then maybe you can direct them in the right direction. So again, I'm here if you need the support, if you need direction, if you need guidance, and all of my information is in the show notes. So I'm always here for you guys, and I hope that you have a great week. Talk to you soon. As always, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to this episode and this podcast. I love that you are here and give me your time and your attention. It means the world to me. If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe. And if you really want to show your love, I would greatly appreciate an honest rating or review over in iTunes. So thanks again for listening, and I will catch you all next week.